Hello friends, this is Lauren Taylor. Thank you so much for joining me in my craft room today. I'm grateful to have you here. I have received the rest of my Spellbinders January 2024 month club kit items. I subscribe myself to the Glimmer Hot Foil Club, the Embossing Folder Club, and the Stencil of the Month. So I do receive those later in the month, and I'm going to also be using the Clear Stamp and Die Set of the Month, which I am on the influencer team for, so I do get that earlier. That's why you see me use it along with Better Press earlier in the month. But now that the rest of my club kits that I love so dearly are here, I wanted to combine them to create another card to give you some inspiration with the club kit. So I'm going to start with using my embossing folder of the month. Again, I subscribe to the 2D one. The 3D ones are also fabulous, but I end up just liking the 2D more when I'm reviewing my club subscriptions. Again, I like the 2D more. I think they're a little more versatile and more my style. So I'm following the sandwich on my Spellbinders Platinum 6 machine, and I always make sure to put the crease or the fold of the embossing folder through my machine. This just causes or allows the air to be pressed out of the open end of the embossing folder. I've broken many a time. I mean, before I got used to using embossing folders, so this is quite a while ago, but I've broken my embossing folders putting them in the other way. So I do my best to always make sure I'm paying attention to put the fold or the part that bends of the embossing folder in first. And it created this beautiful print. I love all these beautiful leaves, and I'm going to be foiling in copper. That is the hot foil that came with my Glimmer of the Month. So I thought I would bring in some lunar paste. I'm using the color Gur. It's more of like a bronzy copper color than a orangey copper color, if that makes sense. But I thought they complement each other pretty well, so I went ahead and just used my finger to add the lunar paste along the edges of the embossed background. And I went ahead and splattered the leftover that was on my glass mat just to use up that medium. You won't see very much of it in the final card, but that's just a way to use your mess on your projects before cleaning it up. Now my Glimmer Hot Foil machine is off camera and it is warming up as we speak, and I wanted to get my paper and foil ready. So I'm trimming down a piece of white cardstock to 4.5 by 5.5, and then I'm going to trim my hot foil. Now the thing is I wasn't thinking, and I should have cut my hot foil to 5.5, but I'm cutting it to 4.5. So I'm basically making a square when I should have been making a little bit more of a rectangle. So I won't completely fill or cover my plate. I'll realize that when I'm laying it down on my Glimmer Hot Foil machine, but it's no big deal. We adapt, and I'm going to end up die cutting this design out once I'm done. So I went ahead and did my Glimmer Hot Foil warm up, the whole process, and now I'm running it through my Spellbinders machine. I run it with the heat sensitive plate down first. I have 2 shims that I took from my Better Press machine, and then the clear plate on top of that as I run it through my Spellbinders Platinum 6. And here you can see how pretty that design turned out. I did miss a little bit on the bottom there, but I think this flower is stunning, and I absolutely love that the stencil this month coordinates with the Glimmer Foil kit. So I'm going through, there are 5 stencils total in the layering set, but I did notice that stencil number 3 is not really necessary if you're using the Glimmer of the Month kit. You're just going to use 1, 2, 4, and 5. I mean, you could do the third one, especially if you want to use the hello sentiment, but I just want to fill in my flower and my leaves, so I'm just going to use, like I said, 1, 2, 4, and 5. So I'm going to start with the first stencil, but let me get my setup ready. I love to use my waffle flower supplies when I'm stenciling. So I have my grip mat, the stencil mat, and then my little ink cube mat, which helps keep everything, really secure to my glass board while I am stenciling or inking anything up. So I'm starting with my flower. This is the details on the first stencil. You can also add in some additional color for the stems, or if you're using this stencil without the the glimmer, you'll need to color in the stem. So I didn't do a very good job at masking. I will get ink into those little spots where the stenciled, are not stenciled, where the stems, there it is, stems of the flowers are, but it's not very noticeable. And the areas where I accidentally go through the stencil that I didn't initially want to, I'll end up covering it up on my adding in details at the end of the card. So I did stencil 1 and stencil 2 the exact same colors. I'm using Distress inks, and I'm starting with Saltwater Taffy and then adding in some detail with Abandoned Coral. Then I'll bring in number 4, and for the center of the flower, I'm bringing in Fossilized Amber to completely fill in that center of the flower. And for the leaves, I'm going to do a combination of Rustic Wilderness as the lighter color, and then I'll bring in a smaller blending brush and do Forest Moss as details for the leaves. So I'm going in kind of similar to how I did my flower and filling in all of the leaves with my lightest color. I'm trying not to go too heavy-handed. I'd rather, go in a little bit lighter with my color and add more than it to be too dark and to be sad. So once I'm happy with the overall coverage of the lighter green, I'll bring in my smaller detail for the darker green. And that's just mostly because I am going to do another round of leaves, and I didn't want to have to clean off my large blending brush multiple times to use a light color and then a dark color. So I went ahead and just used the smaller one for the darker color to avoid having to clean more than I would have to. And also I just wanted a little bit of detail in the leaves, and because there's so many and they all go in different directions, using the little smaller blending brush just helps me get into the areas that I want to for the leaves to have the deeper color and not have to worry about masking or accidentally getting color where I don't want it to be. And I just think that looks so pretty. So let's do the final one. I'm only going to show adding in the details with wild honey on the center of the flower, because I did the exact same thing with the previous stencil to color in the leaves of this last stencil. And I just think this color combination is so pretty. You can see my hands. I'm so happy. I just think it turned out so nice. I went ahead and grabbed a nested A2 arch. Spellbinders has a set of these, but I have ones from scrapbook.com that I'm going to use. And I'm using that it literally just fits perfectly my paper and where my foiling ended a little more abruptly than planned. So I'm going to use some mint tape to keep my die in place while I run it through my die cut machine, since I don't want to risk it moving. I have it placed exactly where I'd want it to go. And here you can see how it looks on top of the leafy green background that I made with the embossing folder and the lunar paste. Now I am going to just corner around the top 2 corners. I'm still kind of deciding if I like it or not. If I wondered if I should have corner rounded the bottom corners and even maybe corner rounding the arch die cut. I don't know. Let me know what you think. I think it's kind of fun to have a card that's a little, a little wonky, a little different than just a rectangle. So it's not quite a shaped card because it's just corner rounding. But I don't know if I should have done more. So let me know what you think in the comments about just corner rounding the top 2 corners of the card. I wanted a little bit more yellow to pop out, like the center of that flower, so I grabbed a piece of yellow cardstock and cut it down A2 in size and attached it to a top folding card base. And then I'm grabbing my corner rounder again to do the corners to match what I did with the green embossed background. And I think it looks kind of cool. I don't know, I think maybe because when I add the arch to it, there's a lot more open space, I guess you could say, on those top 2 corners, which is why I rounded them in the first place. But I don't know if it just looks weird. Let me know what you think. So I've got my background done. I have my panel with my beautiful flowers stenciled. Everything's done with that. So let's move on to stamping to get our cute little bees and our sentiment from the clear stamp of the month. There are coordinating dies for a lot of the sentiments, but not for the thanks for being so sweet, which I think is the cutest sentiment, but it does match really well when you create an arch look or an oval look with the detailed stamps in the set. But I'm going to go with have a beautiful day because I think it'd be great for birthday, a thank you card, a just hello card, a Mother's Day card. There's a lot of diversity with that sentiment, so I can keep it on hand for any type of card I might need. So I'm going to stamp my bees first onto some white cardstock. This is alcohol marker friendly white cardstock and a black ink. So I'm just going to stamp those bees first. I'm not going to worry about how clean the image is because I'm going to clean these stamps off and I'm going to stamp them again when I'm all done coloring with my VersaFine and Onyx black to get a nice crisp outline of my bees as well as my sentiment. So I'm just using that first layer of black to be able to do some alcohol marker coloring. And I'm going to actually just fast forward through this coloring. I used very basic blue, dark gray, and yellow to color these bees in. If you have questions about what I use, just let me know in the comments. But they're so teeny tiny, you don't need to do no detailed coloring is involved at all on those bees. So then I put my bees, or my paper with my bees, back into my MISTI in the same corner, inked up my stamps with, again, VersaFine Onyx black ink and stamp them. So my bees definitely have a nice crisp black outline. You can really see the details of their faces. And then also my sentiment is in that nice crisp black as well. I use the coordinating dies to cut them out. So let's get to finishing up our card assembly. I'm going to add a ton of foam adhesive behind this arch. I went a little crazy with all the foam adhesive, but I wanted it to be nice and stable, especially with all that detailed on the embossing folder behind it. And I went ahead and added that to the center of my card. And then I added foam adhesive to my bees and my sentiment. And I'm using my bee there on the lower right to cover any red ink that got where I didn't want it to go when I was stenciling. Same with my sentiment. And then my other bee, I want it to like he's going inside the flower to pick up the pollen. So I put him in the more upper left-hand corner. Now, of course, I got to add some type of bling, but instead of grabbing pops of color this time, I have been dying to use my ethereal stones from Trinity Stamps. They are beautiful. I love rose gold, and these just embody a beautiful rose gold color that I thought complemented the copper and the pink flower really well. So I used a jewel picker and wet glue to add those around the card. Here's a close-up of my card and how it turned out. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, what you think about this style of card. Again, corner rounding just a couple of the corners. But I hope you enjoyed seeing a few more of these club kits assembled together on one project. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!